If you were sent to stop a vengeful demon from obtaining limitless power beyond all comprehension, what would you do? Apparently, Valak was just getting started. Not only has he come back from oblivion to wreak havoc on the holy, he's well on his way to uncovering a sacred relic that'll make him unstoppable. If our protagonist is gonna have any chance of foiling his evil plans, she'll have to chase the MacGuffin even harder than he does and use it to turn the tables, while also stopping herself from immediately handing it right to him. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat Valak in The Nun 2. Irene is kind of a big deal. Unbeknownst to most of her sisters at the convent, she's the very same nun who banished the demon Valak back to several years ago. You're not gonna hear that from her. These days, she's content with peacefully serving her faith out in God's country, where the sinful temptations of blue jeans and rock and roll can't find her. But unfortunately, the church has other plans. Following a restless night of vivid nightmares, starring her old pal Frenchie, Irene is summoned to meet with the Cardinal as part of a special mission coming straight from the Vatican. It seems one of their top clergymen, Colonel Walter E. Kurtz, has gone rogue and set himself up as a god king among his army of Montagnard guerrillas. Her orders are to proceed up the Nung River in a Navy patrol boat, pick up Colonel Kurtz's path at New Mungba, follow it, and learn what she can along the way. When she finds him, she is to infiltrate his team by whatever means available, and ultimately terminate his command.
Terminate with extreme prejudice.
Oh, wait, that was Apocalypse Now. Her real orders are to visit Tarascon, France, and get rid of Valak again. Evidently, the serial nun impersonator wasn't nearly banished enough, so now they need her to go back out and do it for real this time. And just to make matters worse, it turns out the partner she had for the last op, Father Burke, died a horrible off-screen death from cholera, which means she'll be going in by herself. Naturally, Irene is less than thrilled with the idea of rehashing this mess, especially since the demon almost put her down for good. However, a mission from God isn't exactly something you refuse if you're a nun, so one way or another, she's definitely going in. In that case, we need to make sure we're properly equipped to deal with this kind of threat.
Sisters, make them holy!
I wish. For real though, if I were Irene, I'd make damn sure to ask His Holiness for another vial of Christ's blood so we don't have to worry about scrounging one up at the scene. For those of you that are new to this franchise, it's what she used to take Valak out the first time, and while the effect clearly doesn't last forever, it could still be useful as a means of self-defense while we work out a permanent solution. Question: do you have an oral fixation? Who doesn't? Slam a flight of beers in front of me and I'll down them without realizing it. Give me a pack of gum and I'll chain chew those bad boys until they're tasteless. Don't even get me started on eating a triple meat pizza while destroying enemy tanks and COD. Our brains are hardwired to reward us for indulging, which means bad habits die hard. But I think I have a solution for you nerds. It's Fume. What? Fume is an alternative to any hand-to-mouth habit and enables people to kick bad habits. It's a flavored air device. It's a wooden, hollow, non-electric, and easy-to-use device that uses completely natural essential oils to flavor and scent the air you breathe in. This is not a vape. Fume has tons of different oils like crisp mint, orange vanilla, sparkling grapefruit. There's a flavor for whatever you're in the mood for. This peppermint is like instant stress relief. Not to mention how relaxing it is to play with the device, rolling it around in my fingers. And I don't have to worry about any of it, because Fume doesn't use harsh artificial chemicals. It's all natty. Go to tryfume.com/nerdexplains or scan my QR code and use my code NERDEXPLAINS to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. The Journey Pack comes with your choice of 3 or 6 flavors and prominent Fume. Replace those bad habits with good habits. Thanks to Fume for sponsoring this video and helping to keep me making awesome how to beat videos for you guys. That being said, I'm sure there isn't exactly a ton of genuine Jesus juice floating around anymore, which is why it is imperative we get some beforehand, preferably in some kind of squirt gun for a little ranged purification. Of course, if the drippings of someone who supposedly walked the earth 2,000 years ago prove difficult to come by, pie, I have another solution. Assuming Valak plays by the rules of Catholicism, and given he takes the form of a nun, I'm thinking he does, we should be able to achieve the same effect using wine that's been properly blessed. After all, according to the tenets of the faith, it's literally the same thing. Either way, it couldn't hurt to try, and since communion wine would be much more readily available, we don't really have to worry about running out, so long as there's a church nearby. At that point, all we need is an M2 flamethrower to run it in, and we'll be spreading the good word from up to 40 meters away. Not exactly something you might find lying around a monastery, I guess, but I'm sure the Vatican, with all its resources, would be willing to pull some strings, given the circumstances. While we're at it, we might as well ask if a priest can bless us up some ammo too. I mean, it worked in From Dusk Till Dawn. Let's see how that nun pastor acts when we pull up with a grease gun full of holy points. Another thing we need to address before we leave is our backup, or lack thereof. Seriously, what is with this solo mission BS? Do they really expect us to believe there is no one else within the entire Catholisphere that doesn't have something better to do? We're talking about an actual demon from hell that's running around Europe murdering clergymen. I'd say that's worth rounding up the God Squad for a little payback. Fortunately, it seems Irene won't have to go it alone after all, as her novitiate friend Deborah jumps on board the operation just as the train's leaving the station. And while our heroine tries to talk her out of it, she's not exactly in a position to turn down a helping hand. Sometime later, the sisters arrive at the site of the latest killing and speak with one of the local nuns. According to Sister Astrid, the priest's unholy immolation was witnessed by an altar boy, but the kid's mom won't let him talk. We'll see about that. She also says they had a handyman working here that night who suddenly quit after the murder, which apparently never struck her as even the slightest bit odd.
Yeah, we got word for that kind of odd in English. It's called suspicious.
Right again, Aldo. What's even crazier is that Irene actually knows this person, and he was even present during her last bout with the big bad back in Romania. It's Frenchie, of course, which leads her to the realization of just how Valak came back in the first place. The demon must have possessed him when he swooped in to save her the last time around, meaning he's likely been out here doing the Dark Lord's work for more than 4 years. Knowing this, we should take his picture, or at the very least a description, to the local police and name him as a potential suspect. Obviously, we'll have to leave out all the demonic shit so they don't immediately laugh us out of the station. But the fact he suddenly disappeared after the incident should be enough to get them on his trail. Assuming he's still around town, there's actually a legitimate chance they could catch him, as the population of Tarascon in the 1950s was less than 8,000 people. Plus, his unusual accent adds another identifying characteristic for them to hone in on. Oh, well, I'm sure that can totally wait until tomorrow, right? For now, the Brides of Christ head to their hotel to call it a night. But the problem with their reservation sends Irene out for a walk while Deborah sorts it all out. It's here that our sister spots the altar boy and his friends tearing up the streets, or so she thinks.
Doc, wait!
And he's gone. Turns out the boys were all in her head, much like the nuns she encountered back at St. Carthus. And yet, despite clearly having this realization, Irene still chooses to chase them deeper into the city for some unknown reason. Honestly, it seems like a great way to get yourself mugged, or worse. Fortunately, the worst she comes across is a particularly menacing magazine rack, whose many pages suddenly begin blowing in the wind to create an extra spooky illustration of Valak's nun form. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say that's not a coincidence. That would actually probably be a good time to head back to the hotel and just generally get away from that thing before something freaky happens. See, just like that. On the upside, the demon refrains from ripping her bottom jaw off, and the shock of the encounter seems to plunge Irene into a vivid head movie depicting the brutal execution of Saint Lucia. What this means, I have absolutely no idea, but we saw Frenchie in one of her dreams before. Look how that turned out. My guess is something about what we're seeing here is going to play a significant role later on, so we should do our best to memorize as much as possible in case things start looking familiar at some some point. Of course, the downside to all this is that Irene is currently lying unconscious out on the street in an unfamiliar area. But luckily, Deborah just happens to find her before any weirdos. Elsewhere in town that same night, we find the elderly headmistress of a local girls' boarding school as she investigates a mysterious bump in the night. The disturbance leads her to a cordoned off section of the school where she finds the campus handyman seemingly transfixed on the door, and you'll never guess who it is. Unfortunately, without comprehensive knowledge of his prior work experience, poor Madame Laurent has absolutely no idea what's about to happen, although the way the door suddenly jerks open on its own should be a solid indication this is not where she wants to be right now. Seriously, call me a chicken all you want. There's absolutely no way I'm going in there in the middle of the night. If we're that worried one of our students might be stuck inside, we can call out to them from the entrance and listen for a response. Otherwise, well, maybe spending a night trapped in a terrifying pitch black room will help them build character. I don't know. But of course, the intrepid old schoolmaster just has to go in to make sure no one's enjoying any unauthorized merriment. Little does she realize, however, it's her that's about to have all the fun. Damn, kids are taking their pranks too far these days. So yeah, what can we learn from all this? Well, nothing, really. It was just fun to watch. I mean, maybe there's a lesson here about avoiding dark places and running away from the ghost of your long dead son. Although, to be honest, I don't think she was gonna be making it through this movie no matter what. Seems to me like Madame Laurent was on Valak's list, and without knowing what we know, there's pretty much nothing she could have done to save herself. Fact is, sometimes you're just all I can recommend is making sure you've said what you need to say to the people in your life. Because the truth is, every day is the day that might just be your last. So anyway, back across town, Irene wakes up in her hotel room with good news and bad news. The good news is that she knows the demon is looking for something, and whatever it is close by. I'm not sure how exactly she knows that, given her dream could have taken place on the moon for all we know, but she does. The bad news is they have no idea what this thing could possibly be, or where to even start looking. And short of checking on every last handyman position in a 100-mile radius, they have no way of knowing where Frenchie is either. Fortunately, Deborah's got some good news of her own. The altar boy Irene was chasing after, the real one this time, came by the hotel to drop off the dead priest's rosary. On it is some kind of strange symbol neither of them recognizes, but Irene knows someone who might. After catching a cab to the nearby Catholic archives in Palais des Papes, the sisters share their findings with one of the archivists, who immediately recognizes the emblem as the family crest of Saint Lucia. And because this one priest who was killed had it with him, he deduces that all of Valak's recent victims must have been her descendants. You know, because that's how patterns work, apparently. So, alright, let's assume he's right about that. But why target this one family in particular? Well, according to the literature, the saint's relatives successfully fled after her execution, and with them, they took an extremely powerful and holy relic, her eyeballs. The way Mr. Know-It-All sees it, Valak must be searching for the eyes to gain their power, and that would probably be very bad. At the same time, he figures Irene and Deborah could use them as a weapon to banish the demon once and for all. But of course, that means they'll have to find them first. Problem is, if the Vatican knew where something as powerful as the eyes of Saint Lucia might be, they'd leave no stone unturned in that location to make sure it would never fall into the wrong hands. I mean, you'd certainly think that, but apparently you would be wrong. Turns out, the archivists know exactly where they are. He just never got around to looking for him. According to his records, they were buried in a monastery about an hour away from here, which was since repurposed into, you guessed it, a boarding school. I think it's pretty safe to say this is where our man most likely went after killing the priest. In that case, our next move should be to contact the local authorities and tell them we have a reason to believe a murderer known as either Frenchie or Maurice is working at the boarding school, possibly as a handyman. We have no real way of knowing that for sure, but right now, it's our best guess. If we're lucky, they'll find him there and take him in for questioning, thereby giving us the time to search the premises without him interfering. That is assuming he doesn't immediately unleash hell on the officers and tear them all to shreds. It's unfortunate our super sisters don't think to at least try this, because as we all know, not only is Frenchie actually working at the boarding school as a handyman, he didn't even bother altering his appearance or changing his name. Dude's not exactly keeping a low profile either. Pretty much everyone at the school knows him on a first name basis, and he's not at all shy about fraternizing with some of the staff members. For example, tonight he's enjoying dinner with one of the teachers, Kate, and her daughter, Sophie. However, what began as a perfectly wholesome evening suddenly spirals into chaos when Frenchie starts spazzing out mid-slow dance and collapses to the floor, revealing a demonic insignia scarred into the back of his neck. And it doesn't stop there. Oh, yeah. Obviously, the mother and daughter don't realize the man who's leading them to safety right now is the same one who brought the demon into their house in the first place. Although, that upside-down cross on the back of his neck should serve as a pretty strong indication. Luckily, Irene and Deborah show up in time to expose his dark secret before it's too late. But it seems the paranormal puppeteer is just getting warmed up as the women look on in horror. The kind and gentle man they once knew begins popping and locking in agony as the demon takes control. At which point he just sort of turns around and calmly walks away. Yeah, I gotta admit, I was really expecting a lot more nun crunching to happen here. Although there's certainly plenty of that to go around once Irene tries to go after him. Christ, say goodbye to your liver. For real though, what exactly was she expecting? A hug? Dude's been possessed by a demon. Honestly, Irene's just lucky he didn't rip her entire head off like a mountain. Of course, having watched this go down, I gotta wonder why Deborah would then proceed to jump on his back and hold him like she wanted a piggyback ride. I understand this is well before everyone and their dog was rolling jujitsu, but she might have had better luck wrapping her elbow around his throat and going for a blood choke. That being said, dude's got that big demon energy. Who knows if something like that would even affect him? Irene then suddenly remembers that her cross is, in fact, a cross, and uses its sacred properties to bring him to his knees. At which time, Deborah follows up by using the sacred properties of a table leg to bash his fucking brains in. Good teamwork. So yeah, now that he's all tied up, we really ought to get the police over here and tell them this murderer just attacked us. Like, I realize we'll still have to deal with him later, but the fact is, eventually, he's going to come to and use his super strength to defeat his restraints. And I'd much rather that happen across town in a jail cell than right downstairs in a doorway where no one's watching him. Come to think of it, now would also probably be a good time for Kate to rouse the other teachers and get the students somewhere safe before they're unwittingly forced to participate in an epic battle between good and evil. It'll probably be fine. As for the treasure hunt, the nuns head into the forbidden part of the school and start searching for clues. Fortunately, in this universe, Raiders of the Lost Ark came out in the early 1950s, and because of this, Irene knows just what to do when she sees a suspicious-looking stained glass window. From there, all it takes is a little bit of digging, and the long-lost eyes of Saint Lucia are finally recovered. Still, as Deborah finds out firsthand, this nightmare is far from over. While on her way back to rejoin the others, she stumbles upon one of the schoolgirls sent by her horrible friends to investigate a strange noise. Little does she realize this is no ordinary bump in the night. Well, that's unsettling. Somehow, Deborah manages to make it up the stairs and lock down the girls' room before Baphomet can paint the place red. Although, as she quickly finds out, he doesn't actually need to get a hold of someone to do some serious damage. Meanwhile, back in the old wing of the school, the distant screams of terror remind Kate that she's a school teacher with a duty to protect her students, and not an archaeologist. But before she could spring into action and probably get herself killed, who else but Frenchie rolls into their day up. Yeah, Irene should probably have asked the archive dude if he had an instruction manual for those eyes, because clearly whatever power they hold isn't what I would call intuitive. All is not lost, however, as Sophie manages to run off with the relic before it falls into the wrong hands. With her former friend hot on her trail, she climbs up into the old bell tower to hide, which is probably the worst place that she could have gone when you really think about it. I mean, for starters, there's only one way in and out, unless you're planning on flying, so she essentially just cornered herself. Furthermore, as the school handyman, Frenchie probably knows this place just as well as she does, possibly even better than she does, meaning it's only a matter of time before he eventually finds her. The only good news here is that it seems the eyes of Saint Lucy run on scream power. Well, at least we know it works. Only problem is, the ancient architecture wasn't built to withstand the forces of supernatural shockwaves, resulting in the bell supports giving way and collapsing into the basement, which nearly takes Sophia along with them. Don't worry though, she's totally fine, and the ensuing explosion brings the unbreakable Irene rushing in to save the day. Down in the wine cellar, Sophie hands off the eyes just in time for Irene to bust out her choice of dragon shout and put Frenchie in his place. This, of course, results in the young girl flipping the f*** out because apparently she thought it was just going to tickle him or something. All I can say is that it's a good thing Deborah took a break from being jump scared so she could stop the little brat from doing something stupid. You know, like swatting away their only weapon before the threat was neutralized. Ultimately, the barrage ends with Irene standing over the motionless body of the man who once saved her life. And while I can totally understand how this might be very difficult for some people, please, for the love of God, hand the eyes of Lucia to someone else before getting close to the dude you know is possessed by a demon. Holy sh**. You literally put them into his hand. And of course, we all know what that means. Now armed with unlimited access to godlike power, Valak manifests in nun form to begin generally making life difficult for everyone involved. We've got Deborah being wrapped in chains, Sophie getting chased around with a giant nail thing, and last but not least, Irene taking the worst of it by being burned alive. However, instead of smelling bacon as her delicate flesh crackles over the open flame, Irene is suddenly struck by the realization that she, much like Saint Lucia before her, cannot be burned. It then suddenly dawns on her that she must also be one of the saint's innumerable descendants, because apparently everyone is. Yeah, don't bother with those gimmicky DNA kits. All you really need to test your lineage is a bucket of kerosene. Actually, don't do it though, you'll die. At any rate, now that she's already performed one miracle, Irene decides it's time this twisted sister finds out what's black and white and red all over. But where is she possibly going to get the blood of Christ at this hour? Well, about that, remember what I said about the flamethrower full of communion wine? Well, my idea is still a lot cooler, but Irene's Hail Mary play definitely gets the job done. Peace be with you. And with that, Sister Irene and Sister Deborah have accomplished their mission of sending Valak back to hell, and also recovered actual concrete evidence their religion is real. Meanwhile, Frenchie somehow survived the ordeal, meaning they really didn't have to sacrifice anything along the way. Oh, and that freakish goat thing just sort of disappeared. So yeah, group hugs all around. Except wait, hang on a second. The last time Irene hit Valak with the blood of Christ, the demon lived on because he had already gotten inside of Frenchie. Well, then how would this time be any different? Fact is, they effectively just did the exact same thing, and clearly Frenchie was still possessed at the time it happened. So what gives? I mean, are they really just going to trust he's back to normal because the dude bent down and felt a tomato afterwards? Sorry bro, but you gotta go. If we can't figure out how to get that freak show out of you, we're probably going to have to burn you alive at the stake or something. Seriously, am I missing something here? If so, let me know what's going on down in the comments. In the end, all our main characters made it out alive, and while most, if not all, the people who died were likely screwed no matter what, our heroes could have saved themselves a heap of trouble towards the end by taking greater care with Frenchie's unconscious body, most likely by having him thrown in a jail cell for killing the priest. And while they would have ultimately had to go back and finish the job eventually, taking this approach would have given them more time to learn how the Eye of Lucia worked, thereby making it easier for them to wield it during the final showdown. For that reason, I think The Nun 2 was beaten. Moral of the story, don't start none, won't be none.